All right, so we are there.
Awesome.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Marsha Bergen with Marsha Bergen Real Estate, brokered by Real Broker, and I'm very excited today to talk about the funnest topic ever, property taxes, with none other than Casey from MyExemption check, and he happens to be an appraiser. So Casey, introduce yourself really quick.
Yeah, so my name's Casey Vockel. I'm with my exemption check. So I am actually not the appraiser in the group. It's my father, Steve. However, I control his schedule. So in a way, I guess maybe I am the appraiser, but he's the technical appraiser in the group. And it was actually through working with him that we realized there was such a disconnect between property taxes and what people know that they have available to them. And then specifically what we're going to talk about today is portability. In
Yeah.
addition to doing that, I'm also a full-time firefighter with the city of St. Augustine. So
Awesome. Thank you. And we met, I think we had two appraisals together over the last
probably,
years, maybe more. I don't know,
yeah,
long time.
I
And
know.
talking using the big word portability to a realtor, and you realize there is a big need, because even real estate agents who are doing this day in and day out don't fully grasp it. So,
Right.
we're recording this presentation just in the nick of time before filing for homestead exemption deadline of March 1st.
Yep.
And this is something really important for people who have bought a house in Florida and it's their primary residence. So talk to us a little bit about homestead exemption.
Yeah. So first and foremost, like you said, the deadline to file for 2025 is March 1st of 2025. And the residency requirement is that you were in that property and it was your primary residence on January 1st of 2025. So the effective date of the application is January 1st. However, the statutory deadline to turn that in is March 1st. In some cases, you can get away with late filing. However, I never recommend it because it is considered late and you never know how that's going to go. So, the homestead exemption itself, as many people may know, it's a $50,000 exemption off of your taxable value. That number actually is going to be going up slightly because of new legislation that was passed that allows counties to increase that 50,000. So I think this year I'm seeing $50,722 if I'm remembering correctly. So it's a small change, but it's going
Small
up,
bump.
not down. So
Yeah, that's good.
cannot complain there.
Yeah.
What it also does when you homestead is it caps the annual increase of your assessed value, which is the value used for taxes. It's only 3% a year. So hopefully you buy a house and it appreciates a ton year over year. However, if you're homesteaded, the taxable value is not going to go up with the appreciation. It's limited to that 3%.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that part is the part I always forget and super important for someone like I bought my house in 2017. My
Yeah,
home value has increased exponentially since then. So that 3% cap is really, really awesome for someone like me or someone who
absolutely.
bought their home in 2020 or 2021. So
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
so thank you for that.
Yeah. So this is we kind of talked about this. This save our homes assessment limitation. That's what that 3% cap is. So the max it can go up is either 3% or the consumer price index, whichever is the lower value. So it is typically in our area I've always seen 3%. I don't think I've seen it less than 3% in a while. However, things could of course change year over
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
By having that cap in place, which rolls right into the next slide, it creates a difference between the assessed value, which is the number you pay taxes on, and then the market value as determined by the county as what your home is truly worth on the open market. So, for example, if you have an assessment that's 400,000 because you've had a homestead exemption on it, but the county has determined your home to be worth 600,000, that $200,000 spread is the Save Our Homes / portability benefit. And the benefit is called the Save Our Homes benefit when it's on the current property. And then portability is the ability to transfer up to $500,000 of that savings from one house to another homestead if you move within the state of Florida. So it preserves that savings that you've had on one house if you move to another, which is
Yeah, absolutely. So, with more luxury homes that really have that 500,000 max, that would really impact someone for sure.
Absolutely.
When they're moving up into a different property. So I
Yeah.
think you kind of
So
went over this, but
yeah,
we'll get
I'm
to the
about a
numbers
slide.
here.
I'm about a slide ahead, and I don't have I don't remember the next slide, so I might
Yeah,
be continuously going in front. So
that's all right.
we'll start here. This is perfect. So the
Okay.
property appraiser's market value. I put just value in there as well. Depending
Mm-hmm.
on the county, it may be called just value, it may be called market value, or as you can see here, it's the just market value. So
Yeah.
you
Every county
vary.
wants to make their own just to confuse us, right?
Absolutely. Every county has their own. And then on this particular county, the screenshot was taken in 2023. So it shows prior year's values, which are certified and final. And
Mhm.
then this one shows the 2023 values that are still in progress. So this property, according to the county, has a $482,684 market value. That's their determination of what the home is worth.
Mhm. Interesting.
And also, before we move on, this is typically 15% lower than the true market value. So, for example, if you have a house that you believe is worth $1 million, it should have a market value on the county's website of 850,000. And the reason is they take a 15% cost of sale adjustment off of that, and that's a statewide universal kind of standard. So that's a completely normal thing to see on there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yes.
And then the assessed value, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the assessed value, that's the number that's capped at 3% a year. So assuming you're a first-time home buyer, the first year that property is assessed in your name and you didn't have any portability to take with you, the assessed value and the market value are going to be the same number. That is the number that's capped at the 3%, and that is what you are taxed on prior to your exemptions coming off. So the $50,000 homestead exemption comes off of the assessed value to give you final taxable value.
Oh, okay. Does that, so the county can make adjustments to these numbers, correct? I might be jumping ahead, but
Uh, yeah. So every year, so the assessed value is more of a more controlled by the 3% increase on this. It's 10% if it's not homesteaded, but I know the purpose of this is more so homestead. So
Mhm.
they don't really control the assessed value once that 3%'s hit. Now, if it goes down in value, then it can't exceed the market value, so it'll go down with the market value. But it's the market value that the county does determine every year based on what they've decided your home is worth.
Interesting. Do you think, just side note, do you think they pull up Zillow or any of these online things to look at your market value of your house?
I don't know that they particularly use Zillow. However, what they do is a computer assisted mass appraisal.
Hmm.
So I compare it to Zillow, using their algorithms and their math to analyze
Hmm.
everything. And then it kind of compiles an average. And again, I'm not the appraiser here, but I've heard
Yeah,
my father say this plenty of times when people ask about Zillow is, Zillow gives you kind of the middle of a range. So if your
right.
property is on the low end of the market,
Hmm.
Zillow is going to have it maybe a little too high. But if your property is the high end of the market, Zillow may have you a little too low. And it's kind of the same principle that applies to,
Right.
mass appraising. And the issue we see here with the accuracy of mass appraising is, we have lakefront, riverfront, oceanfront, every kind of front you can imagine.
Yeah,
And, every neighborhood's different. You might go 5 miles and it's a completely different market. And
absolutely.
it's little things like that that if you're not locally knowledgeable of the area, you're not going to necessarily pick up, and certainly a computer doesn't have the ability to pick that up either.
Absolutely. And
And
then
that's
very unique
reasonable.
properties, unique properties, there's a whole nother variable into the mix, and new
Right.
construction and all of that stuff. But that's where a real estate
Yeah.
agent and an appraiser come into play to sort of figure out those important numbers. It is an art form and
Right. And
science. It's a combined thing, in my opinion.
absolutely. Yeah. And when we look at a property that we have to appraise and it has a unicorn in the description on MLS, it's like,
Right.
this is gonna be a fun one.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. This is going to take
So,
me some time. Take me some
yeah,
time.
exactly.
Well, can you explain the portability? I know we talked about, the
Right.
portability, so we've mentioned it. So explain in layman's terms what that actually means.
Yeah. So in this case, we'll look at I guess we can kind of look at 2023. It's a little bit covered with my red circle on there, but the portability is the difference between your assessed value, which it looks like is 449 on here, and the
Mhm.
market value, which they have as 482, 684.
Mhm.
This county, this is Duval County. They actually calculate it for you right here on the screen, so you know when you move that you have up to $33,000 to port with you to your next
Mhm.
property. And what that does is it comes off of your new home's assessment, basically as a coupon off. And, in this case, it would lower your assessed value on year one by 33,000. And that lower value is what's subject to the 3% increase. So for easy math, if you buy a house that's assessed for, 400,000, but you poured over 100,000, now
Mhm.
your assessment on year one is going to be 300,000, and it's
Mhm.
at 300,000 that can only go up 3% a year. Whereas if you didn't have portability, it would be the 400,000 that's only going up 3% a
Right.
year.
That's a
So
huge savings, at even that price point.
absolutely.
And
And
this is Duval County. Do you know if other county websites, which ones off the top of your head, have this portability amount? I don't think St. John's does.
I don't remember off the top of my head how St. John's displays theirs. They
Mhm.
all show you the market value and the assessed value,
Right.
and everyone words it a little differently. For example, I think St. John's has the word total deferred. If I'm
Oh,
remembering, I don't have it in front of me, and
okay.
maybe wrong, but I've seen total deferred on multiple websites, and
Okay.
like I said, every county is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And what's important to note is it's your portability benefit is calculated based on the year you sold. So if let's say we're in 2023 right now, let's say it's February of 2023, and I'm
Hmm.
looking at this property, the portability benefit I get to take with me is in theory that 33,000. However, it's not a final number yet because we're still early in the tax roll year. And as you can see at the top, it's in progress.
Right.
So that is subject to fluctuation. But the 26,000 from last year wouldn't be what you would calculate because it's based on the property that you owned on January 1st of the year you sold.
Got
So
it.
just be
Yeah.
careful when you're looking at values that you're looking at the correct year.
Yeah, super confusing.
Yeah,
So
it
people,
is.
that's why I call you to clarify
Yes.
how you look at it. So people are upsizing and downsizing, going from
Yeah,
multi-million dollar homes to more of a retirement home or vice versa.
for sure.
So how does this work in that situation?
Yeah, so first and foremost, the term upsizing and downsizing is referring to the market value
Mhm.
strictly. So you may be going from a bigger house to a smaller house, but if the smaller house is much more expensive than the bigger house because where you moved,
Right.
it's, that's where the upsize and downsize. It's actually based on the market value of the home you sold compared to the new market value of the year that you're homesteading. And what's important to note too is your departing house would be calculated in the current year. We'll say if we sold now in 2025, but your new home's market value will be based on the market value that's there in 2026.
Right.
So if the county has it inaccurately assessed in 2025, but in 2026 it's reassessed, that's the number you need to go off of. So upsizing is, where it's a little easier to calculate. So you get to take dollar for dollar up to the full 500,000. So as you can see here, if you have a home that you're selling that has a market value of 600 and an assessed value of 400, the difference between that's 200,000. That's your portability benefit.
Hmm.
You get to your new home that has a market value of 800,000. You bring over that coupon, as I call it, of 200, and now you have assessed value of 600,000 moving forward. So
Nice.
you're $200,000 less of a taxable liability on that new.
Yeah.
If you're downsizing, that's where it gets a little more tricky. So the market value on this one's 600 and the assessed value is 300. The difference between those two is 300,000. However, 300,000 is 50% of that old home's market value. So when you get to your new home, which is a downsize, you get to take off 50% of the new home's market value, which in this case works out to be 200,000. So it's prorated downwards proportionally, based on your new home's market value. And the example I like to give is let's say, you have an expensive home that has the full 500,000 and you downsize to a home that's worth 200,000. Well, they're not going to let you pay no taxes. So
Yeah, come on, I
it,
want to pay no taxes.
yeah, don't we all? If, I'm not
Yeah,
that good yet, but
yeah,
the proration is based on a percentage, and I use 50% just because it's an easy number to do math really quick, but it's
right.
all based on your specific situation. It's not always 50.
Okay, it's not always 50%. That's good to know because I was
Yeah.
thinking, oh, that'll be easy. It's just 50%. Okay, so it's going to
Yeah.
be variable, of course, just to make it extra complicated. And another reason why we need to contact you at my exemption team
Yes. Yes. I'm
to help us.
happy to look and plug in numbers anytime someone's
Yeah.
unsure. So,
That's super awesome. So this is something that you have helped me with quite a few times,
yes.
specifically for my different clients. What if the county has your market value too low on your house?
Great
Talk
question.
about
So,
that.
yeah, so like I said earlier, the county determines the market value of your home effective on January 1st every year across the county and even across the state. So, as you know, the portability is the difference between the assessed and the market. But as you can see here, and again, this was taken in 2023, but you had the listing on Hidden Oaks that
Mhm.
actually ended up selling for 885.
Wow.
However, the market value that they have is 482.
Ew,
Now,
yeah.
keep in mind, we do take 15% off of 885, which I don't have right available for me right now, but it's still much higher than the 482.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that difference that you're leaving behind,
Mhm.
unless you proactively correct it and start the process prior to selling your home, will be lost forever. So in this case, the portability is only 33,000. However, it should be at probably a little over 100 grand more based
Wow.
on what the home's truly worth. And the most popular question that I get is, will this affect my taxes? Why would I want to argue to raise it? And the simple answer is, you're capped at the 3% increase every year. So as long as there hasn't been new construction to the property or something that the county wasn't aware of, like you put in a pool or something along those lines, your 3% cap will remain in place.
I was
So
going to ask that question, so thank you. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So here you can see the before screenshot, and remember, we got to look at 2023 only.
Hmm.
Um, so, before this client came to us, they had a $33,000 portability benefit. We argued to have the market value increased, and now their portability benefit is 223,000, which is a substantial savings that they get to take with them. So instead of a $33,000 coupon, they had a $223,000 coupon,
That
which
is that is amazing. I mean, that right there
yeah,
is worth everything.
and
That's
I
a huge
think
benefit.
rough numbers, that's probably $3,000 or $4,000 a year in savings now that they won't have to pay in property taxes forever
Wow.
because it's an annual savings. So
Right. Oh my gosh, that's super important.
yes,
So I have a question. And I
sure,
know that we're looking at this in this time period,
yeah,
historically. When is a good time for someone to look at this value? Let's say me, for example, my
hmm,
house, I built it and bought it in 2017. I
yeah,
added a pool in 2022.
right.
Is it worth me now, even if I don't plan on selling my house in the next year or two? Is it worth me now going ahead and making sure that my values line up, or should I wait more closer to time for?
That's a tricky question to answer. Fixing the values now and then not moving
Mhm.
doesn't do you any good.
Right.
What's important to note is that you can't fix the values after a certain point. So the deadline to file a petition through your county is typically 25 days after the trim notice is mailed in August. I think this year it was first or second week of September was the deadline to petition to have these corrected. So if you come to me in October saying you decided you want to sell and end up closing in November or December, I can't help you because the deadline to petition has closed. So on
Right.
that, you do want to be proactive with it, just
Right.
because you don't want to miss a deadline. However, if we appealed something in 2022, we don't know that the values are going to be accurate still now in 2025. So it may have been great that we won back then, but now the values are wrong again, and you have to go right back down the same path. So
Exactly. You don't want to do it multiple times necessarily. Do it
correct.
maybe that time of year. And I believe you said August, September timeframe.
Yeah, is the deadline.
As
So,
the deadline.
I
Mhm.
prefer we got the process started earlier in the year or even the year before if you know you're going to be selling
Right.
next year, then maybe 1 year ahead could be beneficial, but
Mhm.
multiple years ahead, not normally beneficial. And quite frankly, many people don't know that they're moving
Yeah,
that far in advance either. I mean, you would know that more than I do, but
absolutely not.
I
Yeah.
would think it's a quicker turnover from deciding to move to going to market. So,
Right, right.
uh,
Well, that visualization helps me a ton,
yeah,
kind of understand and also to guide people, to look into this the first half of the year, just kind of look at it, see if you're way off base, if there's a possibility you might be selling over the
yes,
next year and staying in Florida. Now, if you're not going to stay
correct.
in Florida, well, this is a moot point.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
100%. This is a Florida benefit. And really, the property I purchased is the perfect example of why this law even exists because the gentleman that sold me the house, the only reason they were moving was because they didn't want stairs.
Mhm.
And they had built the house in the mid 80s and lived in it since. And their tax bill was nothing. I mean, I was being assessed at a very low number that first year because they had had the homestead exemption in place for so long and
Mhm.
the value of the property that they were buying right down the street was equivalent to the value that they are selling the current property for. And I don't know because I wasn't in the business at the time, but assuming their market value was correct on the home they were selling, their tax bill on their new home is going to be theoretically identical to the one they had on their, you know, lifelong home
Right,
prior because that savings that you captured through all the years, you get to take with you.
right.
And
And
that's
that
why
leads
it's
me to
super
a
important to
question.
have it correct. Yeah, go for it.
Does every county automatically port over your your savings,
They do not. So the application for Homestead is one thing, and the application to transfer your portability is another thing. Um, every county handles the Homestead and portability applications differently. Typically, when you move within the same county and you apply, if they have the online option to apply, it should be automatic and they prompt you and ask you those questions. Did you own a prior home in the
Right.
last 3 years?
Mhm.
Um, it usually goes smoothly then. And I'm saying usually because I've had times where there's been a technical error and someone who had hundreds of thousands in portability, it
Mhm.
didn't get moved over, even though she did everything she was supposed to do.
Right.
And what I preach to people is you get your trim notice, like I said, in August. You need to look at it every year because maybe
Exactly.
you applied for your homestead and it got approved 3 years ago, but they had a software update and yours accidentally got erased. And
Right.
if you catch it, that could be a pretty quick fix. But if you don't catch it and that September deadline comes and goes, by the time you get your tax bill in the mail, it's too late to do anything. So it's very important that you're paying attention to this every year, even if you don't suspect there to be any changes.
Right. Yeah. And I think most people don't really look at it. They kind of look at the big number, don't
Right.
really go into the details of it and just kind of, okay, we're like, my taxes went up or whatever it is,
That's right.
and then complain,
Unfortunately.
but not
Exactly.
really understand, every line item. So that's super important.
Yeah.
So let's say that someone has their house listed, they just got a buyer for it, and there's something wrong with their values on the county website right now, and they're closing in like, I don't know, 45 days from now. What do they
45.
do?
So I would recommend they contact me. So what we do
Absolutely.
is we handle the whole appeal process from start to finish. And as far as the involvement from the client, it's actually very minimal. I just need your permission to move forward and I will. One key aspect to what we do is I get an authorization form signed from the buyer because these hearings are not heard until September, October, sometimes even later than that in
Mhm.
that year. So if you're selling in March, you're not going to own the property when it's time to go to hearing. And I need the current owner's permission to allow me to petition the property.
Mhm.
So I work with, a couple title companies. And if I don't work with them directly, I certainly can reach out to them. Whereas we have a form that we get signed at closing that allows us from the buyer's permission to petition on behalf of the property. And, that's a requirement that we have internally as well as many counties have externally because I don't want to represent a property without the current owner knowing that we're going to
Right.
be there. And, like I said, with the market values, when you buy a home, it's kind of a side conversation, but important, is you're inheriting, I'm using air quotes on inheriting, but you're inheriting that prior owner's taxable
Mhm.
value. So if you buy, like when I bought my home, the tax bill was super, super low for that year. And it's not until January 1st of the next year that it's reassessed. And it's reassessed based on the purchase price, assuming it's an arm's length transaction. So you're going to get assessed based on the value of that home, but the portability benefit is only going to benefit the seller, and the value is only going to help them if it's in the sales year, whereas it getting reassessed in that following year doesn't do them any good.
Right.
So
Yeah, and thinking about that, the assessment,
mhm.
mine was a new construction home, so I was assessed on the land
The
value before
land
the house was
probably,
built. Yeah.
yeah, it's either 50,000 or
It
100,000,
was,
depending on
yeah,
the neighborhood. Yeah,
it was just dirt. So
exactly,
people don't know that are buying new construction. That first year, your tax is going to be vastly different than what they will be
exactly.
the following year. So that's
Yeah,
important. And then this is interesting. You and I just talked about this recently,
yeah. It's
that
very interesting.
portability can be a marital asset, just to complicate all of these numbers,
Yeah, this is
even
where it gets
further.
fun. So
Yeah.
it is a marital asset,
Mhm.
100% of the time. It's a marital
Mhm.
asset that needs to be negotiated. And like I said, the maximum portability benefit someone can have is up to 500,000. And depending on the county, every taxing district's a little different, but that's a 7,500 to, in some places, over $10,000 a year in savings. So oftentimes what happens is I get a call the year after the divorce where maybe the wife left and she bought a new house and they denied her portability application. And she's angry. And she
Right.
calls me and says, I had all this portability. Why am I not getting it? And after I pull up the tax card, I see, the deed where she was removed. And I ask about the divorce. She said, yeah, well, he got the home in the dissolution of marriage, which, if you don't proactively take steps, that also means that the portability is now only in his name and you get none of it. So what I've actually begun doing, and I've spoke with many attorneys and even, conferences with them on this, is, it's a marital asset. So you, A, need to know what's there in the first place, but B, you need to negotiate either for your half of it or
Mhm.
a fair settlement to walk away. So, I've articulated that, similar to winning the lottery, right? You can either get monthly or annual payments, or you can take a lump sum one time. So I say, okay, if husband's staying in the house and his portability is worth X, what is that worth to you to walk away? And we'll use a 10-year holding period and a discount rate. There's some math that goes into it, but we come up with a fair value, based on our research and based on the values that they have in portability. What's it worth to you to leave?
Right.
And if you're not selling the home, that's extremely important to consider. But when you are selling the home, depending on how it's handled, it's typically split 50-50 when you sell. Um,
Mhm.
but to make it even more interesting, let's say husband and wife sell the home, but the wife's moving to Georgia. Well, portability is a Florida benefit. So after 3 years of her not claiming a home in Florida, her half of that 500,000, let's say, goes away. So
Mhm.
rather than the husband only getting 250, I would articulate that the husband needs to negotiate something else for her half of the portability. And then instead of splitting it 50-50, you're able to designate shares as long as both parties agree, or a court tells you you agree. Of course, a judge can step in and say whatever
Yeah.
he or her would like, but
Yeah.
it ultimately comes down to knowing what you even have in order to protect it. Because I've
Exactly.
had clients that didn't get the home, who we have a report that we do on this, that I gave them a report and their attorneys used it, negotiated. The other parties, I can guarantee you, didn't even know what they were talking about. And
Mhm.
the wife got the home, but the husband who hired me got all of the portability, which not only saves him thousands, but now it's going to cost the other spouse thousands because that benefit's removed from the property. So she's going to be unpleasantly surprised when her tax assessment went up because her husband, their attorneys negotiated for something they didn't even know they had. So
Right.
very
I mean,
valuable.
it's so complex. I do not enjoy math and numbers. I am always happy to pass that on to you and
Absolutely.
for you to really get in there and figure out those calculations. And you have an awesome website that has a lot of information on it.
Yeah.
But, I just think it's important for you to have those conversations with clients directly. Anyone who has their house listed or is thinking about listing their house, this should be part of the process, in my opinion. And a lot of real estate agents who aren't as experienced may not even know to do this and to look into
Exactly.
this for their customers. And even thinking
Yeah.
about that 3-year time period too, like if you're going to sell a house and you're going to rent for a while, you want to make sure that you purchase
Yeah.
property in 3 years, right?
Absolutely. Don't sit and wait for the interest rates to come down another 0.5% because you might lose a $10,000 a year savings you're sitting on. And
Exactly.
you know,
Oh,
like I know what you and I have done in the past too, is when you're going to like a listing appointment, you may have me look preemptively just to see what they have going on, even not knowing their situation.
right.
And we've had cases where we find a savings that's worth $5,000 to them in
Yeah.
discrepancy, and we fix it. And yeah, I don't know what closing costs are now, but I'm sure that helps. That
Yeah.
extra money in their pocket. And um, not having, I've had people go from no portability, I've appealed it to the full 500, and that
Wow.
changes your mortgage payment on the new house quite
Huge.
substantially. So now you can even potentially afford more house.
Right.
Um,
And that's a great point because most
yeah,
people are not thinking about that. They're just thinking of mortgage interests and
right.
what's home insurance like right now. Well, guess what? There's another piece of the puzzle in
Hmm.
Florida. It's a benefit. I think it's a huge benefit
Huge,
for Florida.
huge.
Other states, may have something similar. We don't know, but I
Yeah.
feel like ours is pretty awesome. So that
I
is a
think we have one of the best. I mean, of course, I'm not knowledgeable at all in any of the other states. I know there's
yeah,
some that have homestead based exemptions, but
right.
I think Florida's near the top, if not the top, as far as benefits go to Florida homeowners. So, or homeowners.
And
So it's
again, this is only for primary residences. If you have
correct.
multiple properties, you can't claim all of them and do this, but there is a
Correct.
strategy involved, and that's when you contact me and Casey to figure out what the best strategy is for you. And our information
Exactly.
is up here, and would love to catch up with you. We can do virtual meetings together and
Yeah,
discuss and review your tax rolls, in your spare time. Sounds super fun,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Let us know. We'll either email it to me or email it to Marsha and she'll get it to me and
That's right.
we'll get it taken care of for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Casey. This was super helpful.
Yeah. Thanks for
One
having me
day I'm
on.
going to have all this memorized, maybe. I don't know.
Me too. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's good. And it is confusing. I mean, we talk to people who are new into the real estate industry and we talk to what I would call the experts in the real estate industry. And this is just foreign to everybody. And my dad, he's been a real estate appraiser for 35 years in Northeast Florida. He knows everything, right? But
Mm,
he didn't know about portability, and he certainly didn't know that you had the ability to fight for a fair valuation when it's adversely affecting this benefit. So it's,
right. It's pretty
because
awesome.
what happened, just real quick, is the
Mhm.
portability law was signed in 2008, which I was young in 2008, but I've researched and seen the movies. I know what the housing market was doing, and values were going
Yep.
down, not up. So the law existed, but people's values were going down, which meant there was no portability. And then a couple
Right.
years later, things changed and it just kind of fell off the radar. The law was there, but it really wasn't talked about because it wasn't new anymore. So
Hmm.
it's a very misunderstood thing. And another question, I know we hit on it a little bit, but I'm going to specifically say it again. It's a statewide benefit. So
Right.
if you're moving anywhere within the state of Florida, you get to take this with you. It's not
Yeah.
just within the same county. So
It's huge. And you've probably seen this doing, appraisals and things. I have customers that move from South Florida up here to North Florida a
mhm.
lot, very
Yeah,
often. So,
yes,
when one place is crowded, then people start to move,
yep.
or even just moving counties or
Yeah,
even
but
just
hey, Jacksonville's a great area. Northeast Florida is a great area. So I understand
absolutely.
people moving here.
Yeah, it used to be a hidden gem. More people know about it. The traffic's getting a little bit out of control, but nowhere near like, South Florida. So
Exactly. Not even close. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was super helpful. And
yeah.
I look forward to working with you on many, many more of these awesome.
Likewise.
Thanks so much, Casey.
Thanks.